yes, and in New York, I'm sorry this is kind of badly arranged, but, oh yeah, the dates are all off, but Langston Hughes, in New York it's commonly thought that Greenwich Village was the birthplace. Oh, how am I doing for time? Greenwich Village was like the birthplace of gay culture, but it's also known, it's coming to like that, well, if a gay guy wanted to have a really good time in the early 20th century, he would go to Harlem, which was where there was a big African-American community. Because, well, there were just different sexual standards there. Like, African-American society is a good deal more homophobic now than it was back then. It was, Langston Hughes was, well, a great American poet who was, and he wasn't the only gay guy who was a poet. There were Countee Cullen and I forgot, Amy something I've forgotten, and a lot of the jazz singers were lesbian. Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith, okay, yeah, got to hurry. Oh yes, and Berlin, where was another big session. As anyone who's seen Cabaret, which was based on the stories of Christopher Ischel, which was a good deal less heterosexual than he made it out to be in his stories. And yeah, Marlene Dietrich, who was a German actress who later went to Hollywood. Who really enjoyed playing like androgynous figures on the screen. When the Nazis took over, she actually defected to America. She was already in Hollywood making pictures, so she figured, I'm not going back to America, to Germany now. It's also, it's actually a measure of what the gay society in Berlin was back then, when you realize that, Ernst Röhm, the German military officer who was the co-founder of the Stormtroopers, of the Stormtroopers of the Nazis, was openly gay. Not closeted gay, he attended the big gay rallies. He was, it was like, yay for gays, boo for Jews. Which was something that Hitler really didn't like, which was why he had him, executed in the Night of Broken Glass in 1934. And, of course, that was just the beginning of the crackdown for gay people by the Nazis. The Institute of Sexual Studies was burnt down on the same night.
How many more slides do you have?
Quite a few. What time is it?
Coming up to 9:30.
Okay. If anyone wants to go,
if it's just personalities, I don't think it adds a lot.
Okay, no, well, this isn't a personality. I mean, it's a whole. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. About World War II. People.
I think the issue really, is how social thinking has changed rather than populating everything with personality. They don't really tell you about the general trends. So just focus on the general trends rather than the personalities, and you can run through that.
Okay, yeah. Well, about 130,000 gay men were thought to have been killed in concentration camps in the Holocaust, and this doesn't count the people who were both gay and Jewish, who were gay and not communist, who were gay and Polish. They were actually this is where the pink triangle first came in. The pink triangle had to be worn on the uniforms of gay prisoners, and of course they didn't just receive beatings from, they didn't just receive mistreatment from the officers, they received mistreatment from their fellow prisoners. Because it's sometimes said that lesbians were not persecuted during during the Holocaust. It's not completely true, because a number of lesbians were classified as asocials and given black triangles. Asocials included women who had abortions, women who didn't want to get married and have children. But World War II was actually kind of good in other ways, because for gay movements, because, well, these big wars were times when, where people from the country could actually, be in the company of of lots of other guys and like figure out stuff about themselves. Like Siegfried Pizzasur fought in World War II, World War I actually, and he was a famous anti-war poet. But yeah, he was one of those guys who figured it out during World War II. And oh yes, Johnny. There's also the interesting case of Johnny Phelps, who was serving in the women's, the Air Force as one of the, there were quite a few lesbians who signed up with the Air Force. And when President Eisenhower told her that he wanted to give her to submit a list to him of all the lesbians in the Women's Air Force, she said, well, sir, yes sir, but I have to tell you that I think about 95% of the women in our will be in the list, and many of them women whom you have given the awards and medals to yourself, and we have really high standards for bravery and really low venereal disease and pregnancy rates. And my name will be at the top of the list, and it's said that his Eisenhower's secretary immediately actually he'll be second on that list because my list will go on first. So Eisenhower said, forget it. Oh yes, and Alan Turing. And Alan Turing was one of the guys who was instrumental in defeating the Nazis for discovering, for figuring out how to crack the Enigma machine, which was this code machine that the Nazis built. He's an example of how after World War II, people didn't realize what the Nazis had done, that the Nazis had done anything wrong against homosexuals. Alan Turing was, despite being a war hero, he was arrested by the FBI for being homosexual, and they put him on female hormones to decrease his sexual drive. He started to grow breasts. He was really distraught about that. He killed himself by poisoning an apple and eating it. Well, yeah, and this is where we start talking about, I mostly know about American gay activism. Harry Hay founded the Matterkind Society, which in 1950, shortly after the war, because, yeah, well, after you've figured out that gay during the war, you might as well stay in a big city, right, New York. And, no, wait, Harry Hay was in California. The Matterkind Society would do things like going into bars, saying, we are homosexuals. Are you going to kick us out? And, if they said that they would, then they'd stage a protest. Eventually, the bars figured out it was easier just to let them stay there. Oh yes, and there was also this group called the Daughters of Delightis that was started for women by Del Martin and Phyllis Leon, not too long after that. A lot of gay people actually because they were scared of being outed, they chose to work in other fields of activism, like the civil rights movement. Beard Rustin who was openly gay and really hot when he was a young man. He helped to organize this, the big rally that Martin Luther King organized for civil rights in Washington. And yeah, Angela Davis was this big 70s civil rights leader who helped to organize the Black Panthers. In fact, yeah. Oh yes, and it wasn't just black gay people who were in these. Beard Rustin was able to pick up a lot of white boys and Indian boys when he went over to India to find out about Gandhi. Oh yeah, sorry about this slide. Yeah, the Stonewall riots are seen as the great moment in the awakening of gay consciousness. And even though people like Harry Hay were going